The impending ice age that was foreshadowed by scientists, politicians, and hippies alike on the first Earth Day in 1970 never actually came to fruition. If you haven't noticed, our planet is not completely frozen over and we don't currently live in igloos. But the failed predictions made about global cooling in the 1970s have conveniently been swept under the rug to make way for a slightly different issue that also requires immediate and collective action: global warming. In the late 1980s, environmental activists started to wield the power of apocalyptic rhetoric to scare the public into fearing global warming and its disastrous consequences. The most ardent warrior pushing global warming was NASA scientist Dr. James Hansen. June 23, 1988, Hansen testified before Congress stating that he was 99% certain that the year's record temperatures were not natural. It was the first time a scientist claimed that there was a connection between human activity and the warming of the planet. Hansen confidently warned reporters after the hearing, quote, "It's time to stop waffling so much and say that the evidence is pretty strong that the greenhouse effect is here," end quote. James Hansen made many predictions in the late 80s about what would happen to the Earth if we didn't make an effort to stop global warming right then. He relayed some of the scariest predictions to reporter Bob Rice about what would happen specifically to New York City. Quote, "If what you're saying about the greenhouse effect is true, is anything going to look different down there in 20 years? He looked down for a while and was quiet and didn't say anything for a couple of seconds. And then he said, "Well, there will be more traffic." I, of course, didn't think he heard the question right. Then he explained, "The West Side Highway, which runs along the Hudson River, will be underwater. And there will be tape across the windows, across the street because of high winds. And the same birds won't be there. The trees in the median strip will change." Then he said, "There will also be more police cars." "Why?" I asked. "Well, you know what happens to crime when the heat goes up." End quote. Hansen also predicted in the late 1980s that New York would experience droughts so bad in the next 20 or 30 years that there would be signs in restaurants saying, "Water by request only." The only glitch was that the 1990s turned out to be the most drought-free decade in U.S. history. It goes without saying, but maybe we need to say it. None of these predictions have come to pass. Despite Hansen's failed prophecies, he is revered by the scientific community to this day. And he continues his stale warning.
We have got to a very dangerous point. We're close to pushing the climate system beyond tipping points, where the dynamics of the system can take over and become out of our control.
Most recently, he released a paper arguing that a warming of
2 degrees is actually a prescription for disaster. That's actually well understood by the scientific community.
Hansen predicts that just 2 degrees would eventually lead to a sea level rise of several meters, which would mean a loss of almost all coastal cities. But let's remember what he said about the West Side Highway before putting stock into anything James Hansen predicts. If we took Hansen at his word, our world would be a terrifying place. His war against fossil fuels in an attempt to halt global warming would have disastrous effects on humanity.
This is really a total fraud. We're not going to reduce emissions as long as we let fossil fuels be the cheapest form of energy. There are lots of countries that want to lift their people out of poverty, and of course they should do that. But everybody would be better off if the price of fossil fuels was honest. It should include its cost to society.
Hansen obviously understands how integral fossil fuels have been to lifting the world out of poverty. But he would quickly trade improved human living conditions if we could only get rid of coal. Hansen isn't the only person who has made his career based on environmental fear-mongering. Al Gore has done it for years and is quite skilled at scaring people into action against global warming.
Our ability to live is what is at stake.
A decade ago, Gore declared that unless drastic measures to reduce greenhouse gases are taken, the world would reach a point of no return, and that it is America's responsibility to do something about it.
America is the natural leader of the world, and our world faces a true planetary emergency. I know the phrase sounds shrill, and I know it's a challenge to the moral imagination to see and feel and understand that the entire relationship between humanity and our planet has been radically altered.
Well, over 10 years have now passed. Have we reached planetary emergency levels? No? Well, surely Al Gore's other prediction that the Arctic may be ice-free by now has come true.
Some of the models suggest to Dr. Maslowski that there is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
Satellite photos of the Arctic taken by NASA in August 2013 actually show a 60% increase in the polar ice sheet, more than half the size of Europe, proving Gore was wrong, as well as John Kerry.
In 5 years, scientists predict we will have the first ice-free Arctic summer. That exposes more ocean to sunlight. Ocean is dark. It consumes more of the heat from the sunlight, which then accelerates the rate of the melting and warming rather than the ice sheet and the snow that used to reflect it back up into the atmosphere.
Politicians seem to be experts when it comes to using environmental scare tactics to their advantage. Take President Obama's second-term inaugural address, for example.
We will respond to the threat of climate change, knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations. Some may still deny the overwhelming judgment of science, but none can avoid the devastating impact of raging fires and crippling drought and more powerful storms.
Images of raging fires, crippling droughts, and powerful storms could terrify anyone if his statement were true. But in reality, the number of wildfires has plummeted 15% since 1950. And according to the National Academy of Sciences, that trend is likely to continue. There has been little change in global drought over the past 60 years, and hurricanes and tornadoes have hit record low numbers. Despite science and reason, President Obama continued to escalate the global warming agenda, declaring,
climate change is a primary national security threat that we're going to face, and we are working with the Department of Defense to start preparing for that and mitigating for that. And a lot of our international policy and national security policy is centered around the very real concerns that that's going to raise. But we also know that it's going to have an impact on our public health.
A national security threat and a risk to public health? It gets even scarier. The latest prediction that was peddled by the Obama administration's John Holdren is that thousands of deaths will occur due to heat waves.
The report projects that under middle-of-the-road emissions scenarios, we could see from thousands to tens of thousands additional heat-related deaths in the United States each summer.
And just to bring it full circle, the EPA's Gina McCarthy is bringing back James Hansen's failed prediction that drinking water will be unavailable very soon.
You're looking at challenges that are related to more intense floods and droughts. So you're looking at whether or not we can deliver clean drinking water and whether there is drinking water to drink that's available. We're seeing those challenges today. It means in a changing climate they are going to be more severe as we move along.
If we may make a prediction for this Earth Day, it would be this. Apocalyptic predictions about the environment are here to stay. It's up to that vermin, or what we would call humans, to decide whether they believe them or not.